Hi, welcome back. It is part two of the winter grow along. I'm going to focus this part of the grow along on care of your daylily seedlings after they germinate. So I hope you guys are having success, and I know some of you are because I'm getting messages about, okay, my daylily seeds germinated. Now, how long does it take for them to pop through the soil? And did I do this right? And how much do I water? So we're going to cover a lot of that today in this episode. So first of all, let's go through germination. Obviously, this was in the last presentation, but just so you're probably at this stage already, and you've had some germination, whether you did it in the little baggies with peroxide and water, or you just decided to pot them up and plant them and keep them watered. No doubt you probably have some of them that are germinating. Sometimes it takes a little while for that first little green sprout to come through the soil. So my advice to you is do not overwater. Make sure it kind of has consistently moist soil, but not overly wet. And that you need to pay special attention to if you're using compost-based potting soil to germinate in. And that's important because that soil retains water, and you don't want the root to rot before you can sprout the leaf. So just be careful about your watering. If you're using a soilless mix like Pro Mix or a germination mix, that's fine. It's going to dry out a little bit quicker than it would for the compost-based mix. So just keep that in mind. But those little sprouts will come through. And of course, I've been growing mine for a little bit now. These are my seedlings. I don't know if you can see these. So these guys are up probably, I could say 6 inches, but that's the tallest one. They're probably 4 or 5 inches. They kind of look like grass at this point. And they're still in a 6-pack. So you're probably having a little bit of success, and you're going to get to that point really soon if you've had some germination recently. So let's go through a little bit about what to expect. This was also in the last presentation because you're going to start to see that middle photo. The little leaf is going to start sprouting up, or if you just potted them all up in the same container, you're going to start to see multiples sprout through the soil. Now, very important, as soon as you see that little green leaf, your lights need to go on, and your fan should start blowing. So you can use like a little desk fan like you see in the photo, or you can use like one of those box fans. Anything that you have to create air movement wherever you're growing. That's kind of super important. It's going to not only help you not overwater, it's going to help with the fungus gnats. It's also going to help with damping off. So you definitely want to get your fan up and moving. Plus, it's going to sturdy up your seedlings so that the taller they get, they're not just going to kind of flop over. So that's the first tip. Second thing, your grow lights. Once they're on, you need to have them as close as you can to the seedlings without touching them. So the closer you get to your seedlings, the more intense and the more light they're getting, so the happier and the faster they're going to grow. You don't want leggy seedlings. That defeats the purpose of starting them early. And then if you have a grow light like I do in the picture, or you have a tabletop that's adjustable height-wise, or you're just using a shop light that you can adjust, you just start adjusting. Don't worry too much if your seedlings are 2 or 3 inches shorter than each other, or you have ones that are taller. Just keep it at the level that's right above your tallest seedling. The other ones, they'll start to catch up. The timer is really helpful for grow lights. I have an extra one actually here. So they kind of look like this. It plugs into the outlet. And you can set it automatically for 12 to 14 hours. So you can tell it turn on at 6 in the morning and turn off at 10 at night. You can choose whatever you want. They do want longer periods of daylight than what we naturally have in the winter. So it is a good idea to have the timer. If you're like me, I get tired at the end of the night. I forget. Sometimes I go to bed and I'm like, oh crap, did I turn the lights off? And I have to run down 2 flights of stairs to make sure that I turn them off. If you have a timer, it eliminates that. So that has been really super helpful for me, and especially when I'm super busy. Let's see. Now, watering. So Watering is going to depend on a few different things. I've had some questions about, oh my gosh, how often should I water? It feels like they're drying out a lot. Am I over watering? It feels like there's water left in the tray. Here's what I'm going to tell you about watering. It depends on your soil type as to how often you're going to water. So if you remember, I'm going to switch to this slide for really quickly. If you have a soilless mix, it's meant to be light and fluffy and to freely drain. So it's going to dry out more often than you would if you have the compost-based potting mix, because a lot of times there's peat or coconut coir in there and that retains moisture better. It's not to say that you're not going to water often, but you're going to water less if you use the compost-based mix versus the soilless. So if you're using a pro mix or a germination mix, just know that you're probably going to water often because it's really not meant to hold and retain water. Going back to this slide, so the humidity in your growing room. If you have high humidity, you're probably not going to notice that it dries out as much, but most of us, I'm growing in my basement. It's all concrete. It's super hot. We have radiant heat, so all of our heat starts from the basement and goes up. I'm in a super dry environment, so I know for a fact that I'm going to be watering a lot. I'm also using a fan. A fan is going to like blow across the seedlings and naturally take some of the moisture with it. So that's also going to help, but it's going to help dry them out faster. So you may have to water more often, but the fan I feel like is a necessity. It does so many things for your seedlings. I would not eliminate that. Temperature. If you are growing in a room like me, I have 75 degrees. It's hot. It's warm down here. And obviously that's going to help naturally dry out the soil faster. And then also a huge variable here. If you're growing in a 6-pack, I start mine, once they germinate, I put them in a 6-pack. And the soil, I don't know, maybe there's 3 inches of soil. 3 inches by 2 inches. What's that? 6 inches? 6 cubic inches of soil. Is that my calculation correct? No, probably not. Anyway, so I have the little cell blocks. That's going to dry out a lot quicker than when I pot them up and put them into their little trade gallon containers. The more soil you have in your cell and the more soil you have in your pot that you're growing them in, the less often you're going to have to water. It's just the way it goes. Right now, they're in tiny little grow cells. They don't need that much room, and you can start a lot of seedlings that way, and then you pot them up as they get bigger, but you're going to have to water more often the less soil you have in the tray. So smaller cells equals more often watering. Once you start potting up, you're going to start to see you can skip a day or two. I mean, I use the 1-gallon containers to pot up. I also use solo cups in the meantime. If you want to use a solo size cup, that's good, like a 4 or 5 inch container. Those are good, and you don't have to water as often unless you have super dry air, you have the fan on, you have a really high growing temperature in your room. There's a lot of things. So you will have to monitor that. There's no hard and fast rule. Everybody's growing space is going to be different. Your air humidity is going to be different. Your temperature is going to be different, and the size of the container you're growing in is going to be different. So you're going to kind of have to figure that out and get your schedule. But just know that when you start potting them up and they're getting bigger, you water less. Plus, you're going to want to let them dry out a little more in between waterings as they get older. So that way it helps the roots, feel their way down farther. And you want the fungus gnats not to have that warm, moist environment all the time. You want to dry it out just to annoy them. All right, so let's go and move on to potting up. So obviously the goal is to have deep roots and good foliage, but how do you know when it's time to pot up your daylilies? If you're growing in seedlings or little seed cell pots like these, you're going to start to notice, I don't know if I can pull one of these out. Oh, this is not ready yet. Okay, so mine are definitely not ready yet. What you'll notice is that all of those roots start to become the square in your little pot. You can literally lift out the whole seedling by the foliage, and it's going to be more root than it is soil. Not so much where it's root bound, but if you look at the picture on the left hand side, those roots are just starting to marble around the soil. So that's like an indication. You don't have to pot it up at that stage yet, but when you start to see more roots and it's kind of they're starting to circle around, it's gonna need more soil and it's gonna need a bigger pot at that point. And then you'll see what they look like in the center photo. That is when you really start getting going. That is grown in a 1 gallon container. Actually, no, I'm sorry, I'm wrong. Those were grown in solo cups, and those are going and getting potted up to 1 gallon containers. So that is the stage in between on the left when you just start those seedlings to when you put them in a solo cup with that much soil, and then you're potting them up to 1 gallon size. So that's what the roots will look like without soil. Now, what is the benefit to potting up? So again, on the left, once those roots are starting to marble and their seedlings are starting to go around and around the bottom of the container, you're going to want to pot those up because you don't want them stressed. Your seedlings get bigger faster when you pot up. So the more soil that you give your seedling, the more nutrients it has to pull from, the bigger the plant's going to go faster. And that makes sense, right? You're just giving it more space, more room, more nutrients. It's just going to keep growing. It's going to do its thing. The roots also will get bigger and go deeper. You're just establishing that plant faster. Also, when you pot up, you're going to use a potting mix. You're not going to use the germination mix. The potting mix is going to have nutrients in it. It may have a slow release fertilizer in there. It's actually meant for like transplanting up or containers, and it's meant to provide nutrients to growing plants. So once that seedling is big enough and it's no longer relying on that little seed for food, and the roots are kind of encompassing the whole cell tray that you're growing in, you're potting it up with new fresh soil, and it's going to grab from those nutrients in the new soil, and it's just going to start the roots are going to get bigger, plants are going to get bigger, your foliage is going to get taller. And what you don't want is stressed plants. It's hard to like recover once your plants are kind of stressed. You really need to feed them, and we're going to get into that in a second. But the larger your plants are in the springtime, when it's time to transplant them, the better chance you have to see them bloom. So if you're giving them their natural desire of just growing and getting fed and getting bigger and all that good stuff prior to putting them out, you're going to have decent sized plants. And I mean really good sized plants. What are you whining at, Zoe? Zoe is upset because the cat is up here watching me. And she just wants to play with the cat. All right, so let's go into feeding the seedlings a little bit. I'm going to break this into two parts. One is if you're using a soilless mix to pot up, and the other one is if you're using a compost-based mix, and it matters. All right, so first, if you're using a soilless mix like Pro Mix, if you're using a germination mix, if you're going to use a low quality potting soil, so I don't care if you buy cheap potting soil, but you just need to know that there's not a lot in that to feed your seedlings, so you're going to have to supplement with fertilizer. So on a soilless mix, there's no nutrients in the mix at all. So a slow release balanced fertilizer mixed into the soil when you're potting up is necessary. So when you're potting up, choose your container that's going to be, 2, 3, 4 times the size of what they're growing in now. You're going to mix a little of those granules, like Osmocote or those little granules. You can mix those in there. That's a slow release fertilizer, and you can mix that into the soil before you pot them up. And as you pot them up and water them in, it's going to release those nutrients over time. You can also choose to use a liquid feed such as fish emulsion, which is what I prefer. I do a diluted fish emulsion, and I water those weekly. That's the slogan. So it's weekly as in not a lot of strength, super diluted, and it's weekly on a weekly basis. I recommend doing the fish emulsion when you pot up regardless, because if you use a slow release fertilizer in your soil, it's going to take some time for those nutrients to be available to your plant. So the fish emulsion at transplant just kind of gives it that boost and nutrients to get it to the point where the nutrients are released as you water. I hope that makes sense. If you are using a compost-based mix, like I'm using the Fort V, just for example, but there's a lot of high-quality potting mixes out there, and you're going to know they're going to be probably more expensive than the lower quality potting mix. It also has compost built into the mix, though that is because there are nutrients in the soil. So you don't have to apply any other necessary fertilizers. It's already built in. It's already in the soil. It's available for uptake by the plant. So the plant's going to feed on the nutrients that are immediately available. I still do the fish emulsion drench when I pot up. So after about 3 weeks of potting up, the foliage is going to get huge. The roots are going to get huge. And you only have so much soil in the cup. My dog is going crazy with a plastic bottle upstairs. I don't know if you can hear that, but it's crazy. I hope it's not distracting. Anyway, so even though I use the compost-based mix, I'm still doing the root drench or the watering in with the Neptune's Harvest fish emulsion. I use that stuff so much. I love it. I've always had good luck with it. It just provides a good range of nutrients, micronutrients, all that good stuff. Kelp. It helps. You really want green growth on your seedlings. So like the bloom booster fertilizer, don't use that. You really want a balanced mix or something that's going to focus on nitrogen and the foliage growth. Because at this point, that's all we're concerned with. Getting enough foliage, getting good root growth, and then once they're outside, then we're going to talk about feeding your daylilies. Once they go in the ground, they'll be able to grab and uptake all the nutrients in your soil where you plant them. So again, it does matter. If you are just using your soilless mix, just know you have to feed. There are no nutrients. So if your leaves start to yellow, they just look sickly, they're not really standing up, they just kind of look like they need something, 9 times out of 10 it's going to be because they need food. They're either stressed in their pots and there's not enough soil to feed from, or there's not enough nutrients in the soil. Fish emulsion is a very good, quick, it's like vitamins. You know, if you take your vitamins every day, it's kind of like that. It's immediately available for your plants. So I use that regardless, even though I have a higher quality potting mix that I start with. You can there's a couple things that can happen too with the fungus gnats. I know people struggle with this. There's no hard and fast cure for fungus gnats unless you're going to just like chemically kill them off, which is a possibility. I mean, honestly, we're growing indoors, so if you have an absolute terrible infestation, by all means, do what it takes without killing your plants. So fungus gnats, they can eat the roots of your young seedlings. They're very annoying. They multiply quickly. They love the moist soil. They love moist, warm soil, standing water, any of that. They're kind of like mosquitoes in that way. So a few things you can do to manage them. You can let the soil dry out between waterings. So if I don't know how well you can see this, but these, like the soil is kind of cracking. It's so dry. I'm not really concerned at this stage. I'm not really concerned if I let these over dry out. I kind of know I need to water. At this stage, I'm watering once in the morning, maybe once at night if I need to, but if I forget the next morning, at least once a day, I'm doing a pretty deep soak for this. But they're dry right now, and I'm not really rushing to water them because if I water them and keep that soil consistently moist, that's just going to create an awesome habitat for the fungus gnats to multiply. So you can help by letting the soil dry out pretty good. Now, you can also water with a hydrogen peroxide water mix like you would use to germinate your little seed baggies. That has helped. You'll actually hear the little hydrogen peroxide bubbles in the soil. It screws up the larva. So if you have larvae in your soil, which is where they are, it will disrupt them. Does it kill them? It can. It does manage it. I have used that, and I do use that method if I really have a good amount of them. I do water in with the hydrogen peroxide. It does not affect your plants, so that's helpful. You can also buy the little yellow sticky traps. They come in little cute butterfly shapes. They come in big like slabs that you can just stick to a wall. You can stick it to the side of your containers. It does work. I have had like I changed them out one year, like probably every 2 weeks. They were just pretty saturated with the sticky traps. They love yellow. They're attracted to yellow, and once they land on it, they can't get off it because it's super sticky. Those are really helpful. And then also mosquito bits. I don't know if you guys have heard of this, but maybe this is backward. I don't know. But also it says also controls fungus gnats. So this is something that you can put into water or standing water outside to kill off fungus gnats. But I've also found that if you have a big infestation of them and you can mix it into your soil and water in, it does help control them. So it is toxic, however. So you want to be careful. You know, you're not putting it in water that you're obviously drinking or watering your plants with. Like I wouldn't dilute it in water that you're watering with. I would just put the little bits. They're kind of like little pellets. You just mix it in with the soil, and as you water, it will release the chemical to kill the larvae in the soil. So that's also something else that I've found is helpful. And then once your seedlings are big enough, or you are growing them and now it's springtime, so they can actually go outside, 2 weeks before you want to transplant them, I would start hardening off your plants. You get them acclimated to the outdoors, give them a little bit of sunshine the first day, bring them out for an hour, then bring them back in, put them under lights. The next day, 2 to 3 hours, bring them back in. You don't want to bring them out and leave them out. If you do that on the first day, you are going to sunburn your plants and the leaves are going to turn white. They're going to bleach out, and you are pretty much ruining its chance to absorb energy from the sun. You have to give them a little bit of a chance to sturdy up and take on the sunlight, because they've never had direct sunshine. And even though we have grow lights inside, it does not compare to the intensity of full sun. So just be very careful with your seedlings. And that goes for all seedlings that you're growing. You definitely need to harden them off and give them a chance to acclimate to the outdoor variables before you're going to transplant them. So you'll just gradually increase the time that you're spending outside with them, up to like 5 hours on the third day. And then you can leave them all day. Once they're acclimated up to, 5, 6, 7 hours, you can leave them outside all day as long as they're not showing signs of like, ooh, that was too much today. Okay. Leave them outside, and then you can have them stay outside in a protected area overnight, so they kind of get a little bit acclimated to the drop in temperature at night. And after that, a couple days, they can go right in the ground. They will be happy and off and running. So I hope that this was, I hope this answered a lot of questions that you guys have. If you still have questions, reach out to me. I appreciate all the messages and the questions, because that means that everybody's actually having some success with their daylily seeds. And it'll be exciting. I can't wait to see how many of your seedlings bloom for you. We run about 30% here for first year blooms, and the rest of them, they will bloom next year. So when you've already forgotten about the seedlings for this year and you're growing new ones next year, you'll plant your new seedlings out next year, and then you'll be like, oh my God, there's a new bloom. I've never seen this before, because that one is going to bloom from this year's growth. So it's exciting. You constantly have like this new cycle of blooms if you get into a habit of growing daylily seeds every winter. The ones that don't bloom, you kind of forget about, and it's like a bonus bloom in the following year. So that's kind of exciting. But the only other thing I want to mention, I do use the Neptune's Harvest fish and seaweed emulsion. It's the teal label. That works on everything, for everything. Vegetables, plant, like I use that as my fertilizer on everything. So if you're going to get one fertilizer, that would be the one I would recommend. You can get it in the smaller little quart size, or a gallon or a 5-gallon drum like I do. And there's an indefinite shelf life. You basically take the concentrate out and mix it as you need to use it. And all of the concentrate, as long as it is stored properly, it is indefinite shelf life. So you're never going to have to worry about, oh, am I going to use all of this? You will, and you can spread it out over years if you're not growing that many things. But I assure you, if you have house plants, if you have outdoor plants, use it on there and see what happens. You're going to be thrilled with it. I've used it since I started gardening, and I've had lots of success on everything. So, all right, reach out to me if you need. If there's questions you have that I haven't answered, please let me know. I can certainly add that in or do another video. But I hope you found it helpful, and good luck. I can't wait to see what all your babies look like.